American who grew up in schools that were taught in English, you likely learned rules about how to speak the language correctly. When somebody asks how you are, you're supposed to say, well, not good, things like that. Maybe you were from a different place than your teachers or peers, or you grew up in a multilingual household, and maybe you were told that your accent was funny or even wrong. But have you ever considered where such rules and expectations came from? Who made them? And why do so many people speak and write in ways that aren't represented by this supposedly standard language? Well, the truth is that there's no one English language. In March of 2025, the White House released an executive order designating English as the official language of the United States. This might seem benign, especially compared to the rhetoric of other executive orders. But the US had no designated official language until then, and English still dominated governmental and educational spaces. So why make it official? To answer this question, we have to go back to the Middle Ages and to Geoffrey Chaucer. As Kofi Campbell observes, the emergence of English as a literary vernacular in Chaucer's day was an expression of independence from a recent history of French literary and cultural domination after the Norman conquest. This emergence was inherently a nationalist maneuver. Chaucer's own milieu was multilingual, writing in English, French, and Latin. And there were many Englishes in Chaucer's time, not just one. It was the transmission of English as a literary vernacular, that is, as a prestigious form of written artistic expression, that set up a system of rulemaking for written English and privileged it over other languages. Written English began a slow process of becoming standardized due to practices in the English Chancery of the 15th century. Such rules became even more established over time due to governmental, educational, and cultural forces invested in the construction and maintenance of an English national identity. The construction of one prestigious form of standard English that is marked as superior and aligned with global white anglophone hegemony was the outcome of a long historical process. It took social structures such as educational systems and literary anthologies to privilege only certain language varieties over others. According to survey data and voting records, early 20th century anxieties about the influx of immigrants into the US after World War II resulted in legal attempts to make English the official language of the United States. While it didn't pass, another surge in popularity for legally designating English as the country's official language occurred after the 1965 immigration legislation that abolished both the national origins quotas and the explicit exclusion of Asians. Another amendment to the Constitution was proposed in 1981, the so-called English Language Amendment, but it didn't pass. To sign an executive order designating English as the official language of the United States today is to affirm and legislate the English language as a tool of white supremacy. It uses one form of language to define who is properly American, and it implicitly questions who can fully belong in the country and fully participate in its public life. For alternatives to narrow ways of thinking about language and national belonging, I looked to poets of color who used Chaucer, the so-called father of English poetry and symbol of English nationalist tendencies, to disrupt the power structures of language itself. Jamaican poet Louise Bennett's poem, Bands o' Killing, which roughly means lots of killing, names the historical mechanisms of power and violence that accompany cultural claims of one standard English.
So you are the man me hear about. And you them said a tech wholly by English out said that you're going kill dialect. Let me get this straight, Master Charlie, for me not quite understand. You're going kill all English dialect or just Jamaica one? If you're equal up with English language, then what make? You're going to feel inferior when it come to dialect. If you can't sing Linstead Market and Water come at me, yai, you will have to top sing Old Lang Syne and coming through the rye. The language where you're proud of, where you honor and respect, Poor Mas Charlie, you don't know say that it spring from dialect. That them start fi try turn language from the 14th century. 500 years gone and them got more dialect than we. You will have to kill the Lancashire, the Yorkshire, the Cockney, the Broad Scotch and the Irish brogue before you start kill me. You will have to get the Oxford book, a English verse, and tear out Chaucer, Burns, Lady Grizzel and plenty of Shakespeare. When you done kill wit and humor, when you kill variety, you will have to find a way to kill originality. And mind how you da read them English book there on your shelf. For if you drop a H, you might have to kill yourself.
Speaking to the white Master Charlie who wants to eliminate non-standard dialects, the poetic speaker asks which version of English he intends to kill. The speaker argues that prestigious forms of English poetry were themselves dialects to begin with, springing from earlier vernacular traditions dating back to the 14th century. To eradicate non-standard Englishes now would mean killing off existing regional variations within Britain. It would mean ripping out texts by Chaucer, Shakespeare, and other historical authors from the Oxford Book of English Verse. The idea of tearing a book might very well be a submerged allusion to Chaucer's bold wife of Bath, who rips pages out of a misogynist anthology or Book of Wicked Weaves, compiled by her abusive husband, who sometime was a clerk of Oxenford. Through this allusion, Bennett rhetorically imagines violence against an Oxford book that embodies an oppressive system. Bennett's Black Caribbean voice exposes the myths of purity that underlie the historical process of creating and sustaining white Anglophone norms, and by extension, an ideology of global white supremacy. The prestigious vernacular of standard English was never inherently superior to any other language variety, and was ultimately based upon a once humble 14th century dialect itself. Bennett's poem reminds us that there's no one correct English, not in medieval Britain and not today. Her poem helps us to see long-standing systems of violence that suppress all other forms of language that are deemed inferior by comparison to a standard, prestigious variety of English. She reminds us to question the rules that we've taken as a given. And she shows us how language can be used as a tool of oppression. But in the right hands, it can be a tool of resistance.